We are diving deep today into maybe the most profound question there is. Who am I? But maybe even more. Why is figuring that out so tricky?
It really is. I mean, think about it. You can't actually look directly into your own eyes, can you? Not without a mirror.
Right. Or bite your own teeth?
Exactly. Or paste your own tongue. There's this elusiveness right at the core of our being.
And that kind of sets the stage, doesn't it? Because if we can't directly see the self, we end up, well, we construct it.
We do. And what the sources we're looking at today suggest is that the I, myself, most of us walk around with, isn't some fundamental truth. It's more like a framework we've inherited, culturally conditioned.
Yeah, it's less about biology and more about consensus, almost. A shared story we tell ourselves about who we are.
A very powerful story. And our mission today is really to unpack that main story, especially the Western version, see how it differs from other views, and look at the big ideas, the myths, you could say, that shape how we see everything.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we start? With this sort of box we put ourselves in.
Pretty much. The dominant idea in the West, the one the source material calls the skin-encapsulated ego, is this feeling that your real self, your awareness, is sort of trapped inside your skin.
Like a little pilot driving a body machine.
Kind of, yeah. It's a center of awareness and action, but it feels separate from the body itself. And you hear it in our language all the time.
How so?
Well, we usually say, I have a body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not, I am a body. That little word have creates a separation. It implies ownership, control, rather than identity.
I see. Like my body is a possession, not me.
Exactly. And this splits how we think about our actions, too.
Yeah.
There's the stuff, I do the voluntary things.
Like I decide to walk, I think, I talk.
Right. You're doing those. But then there's the involuntary stuff, your heart beating, digestion.
Yeah, I can't really say I'm beating my heart convincingly.
No,
Yeah.
it just sort of happens to you. It beats itself. It's outside the control of that central I.
And where do we usually imagine that I lives?
Conventionally, in the West anyway, it's up in the head. Somewhere between the eyes and behind the ears.
Okay. And the source material has this great analogy for that, doesn't it? The little man inside our heads.
Yes, it's a powerful image. This little operator in a control room, like that old SAC Air Force Command Center, surrounded by screens, getting data from the senses, pushing buttons to make the body move.
That sounds stressful.
It is stressful. That's a key point. This feeling of being a tiny, isolated controller managing this huge, complex, partly alien machine,
Hmm.
that's a recipe for anxiety, right?
Because the controller can never really relax.
Never. Always on guard, always trying to manage the uncontrollable, both inside the skin like the heartbeat and the world outside.
Which makes the location seem really important. Is it always in the head?
Well, that's what's fascinating. No, it's not universal. In Chinese, Japanese traditions, for instance, the center isn't necessarily the head.
Oh, where is it then?
Often it's the kokoro or shin, the heart mind. It's located more in the chest, sometimes the solar plexus.
Heart mind. So thinking and feeling together, not just the brain.
Exactly. And shifting that center from the anxious, calculating head to the feeling core of the body, well, that changes the whole relationship with the world.
Okay, so this skin-encapsulated ego, especially the one in the head, makes us feel kind of separate.
Yeah, estranged. That's the word the sources use. If I am this little conscious point inside, then everything outside the skin feels foreign, maybe even hostile.
Like the world is something out there that I'm confronting.
Precisely. And that feeling leaks into our language again, doesn't it? Think about how we talk about life.
We talk about facing the facts, confronting reality.
The conquesting nature, the conquest of space, it's all very adversarial, like we're in a permanent state of battle against the universe.
Wow, I never quite thought of it that way, but yeah, it's like we're always geared up for a fight.
This whole mindset, this feeling of being separate and needing to conquer, it's really rooted in some big underlying ideas. The sources call them myths.
Now, myth doesn't necessarily mean false, right? It's
No.
more like a grand story we use to make sense of things.
Exactly, a foundational idea. And the first big one in the West is the myth of the world as an artifact.
Meaning, it was built like a chair or a pot.
Yes, it wasn't something that grew organically, it was made. Think of the Genesis story, God forming man from clay, breathing life into him.
So under this myth, everything stars, insects, people, they're all seen as constructed things, assembled.
Pretty much. Which explains why a typically Western question from a child is, how was I made? The focus is on assembly, on parts.
But that's really different from how nature actually seems to work, isn't it? Things don't usually get assembled from the outside in.
Right. Nature grows, it expands from within, it complicates itself outwards. Think of a seed becoming a tree. That's not assembly line work.
So making versus growing, that's a huge difference in perspective.
Huge. And the artifact myth immediately sets up a hierarchy, doesn't it? If things are made, there must be a maker, a boss.
Yeah, the supreme architect, the designer.
Exactly. But that idea of the supreme maker, the celestial architect, well, it eventually started to feel a bit oppressive for many people.
You mean like being constantly watched? The source mentioned that anecdote, the thou God seest me I.
Yes, that captures it perfectly. This feeling of being under constant surveillance, judged by this infinitely powerful, infinitely demanding entity, it became a burden.
And maybe less plausible too, as we learned about, the sheer scale of the universe, galaxies and all that.
Right. The old image didn't quite fit anymore, so Western thought kind of needed an escape hatch, and we swapped myth 1 for myth 2.
Which is?
The myth of the purely mechanical universe. This is the one that's much more fashionable now, often seen as just common sense.
Okay, what's the gist of this one?
The universe is fundamentally dumb. Stupid.
Yeah.
It's just random energy, particles colliding, no inherent meaning or intelligence.
And consciousness, love, values.
Ah, well, those are seen as purely human phenomena, confined within our skin. They didn't come from the universe. They just sort of happened here.
So life itself is just based on blind energy. The sources call it libido, but maybe not in the Freudian sense.
Right. Not strictly Freudian sexual drive, but more like raw, chaotic, undirected cosmic energy, purposeless force.
And our intelligence then is just, what, an accident?
A cosmic fluke, yeah.
Oh.
An unfortunate accident or even a ghastly mistake in a universe that simply doesn't care.
Wow. That sounds bleak.
It can be. And under this myth, what's our only option? Since the universe is irrational and chaotic.
We have to fight it, beat it into submission, conquer it again, but this time it's a stupid it instead of a judging him.
You got it.
Yeah.
But here's where the source material really pushes back, and I think it's a crucial point. How logically do you get intelligence, complexity, awareness
Oh.
out of total stupidity?
Yeah, that does seem like a bit of a leap.
The source calls it perfectly idiotic. You just don't get intelligent organisms popping out of fundamentally unintelligent processes. It's like that saying, you don't get figs from thistles.
So we've kind of twisted ourselves into knots to avoid the old God the Maker idea, but maybe ended up with something equally illogical.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
The argument is that we deliberately disconnected intelligence from its source because the old model felt oppressive. But maybe the answer isn't either the maker or the dumb machine.
What's the alternative then?
A fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of thinking we came into this world like astronauts landing on an alien planet,
We came out of it.
exactly, we grew out of it.
Okay, explain that. The apple tree analogy is key here, isn't it?
It's central. A tree that grows apples. Well, we call it an apple tree, right? Because the tree apples. That's what it does.
Makes sense.
So in the same way, the solar system, or more specifically, planet Earth,
Uh-
peoples. We emerge from this world in the same way apples emerge from the tree.
So we're not something separate on the world, like slime on a rock.
Right. That view, first there was just rock, then life kind of crawled onto it like a fungus that completely disconnects us. It denies that intelligence is part of the whole process.
So the potential for us was in the rocks, in the gas.
If evolution means anything, yes. The potentiality for the person is in the rock, just as the potentiality for the oak tree is already there in the acorn. We're not separate islands of consciousness. We're expressions of what the universe does.
Okay, so if we came out of the universe, not into it, that changes how we relate to everything, doesn't it? What kind of attitudes does that lead to?
Well, the sources talk about two main sort of role-playing attitudes we adopt based on which myth we buy into.
Right. What's the first one?
The first is the tough guy stance,
Yeah.
the hard-headed realist.
The one who says, come on, it's just rocks and physics.
Exactly. The world is only just a lot of geology, fundamentally stupid, and our consciousness is a weird, probably tragic accident we just have to deal with. Putting the world down, basically.
Okay, that sounds familiar. What's the second attitude?
The opposite, the warm-hearted attitude. Instead of putting the world down, you put it up.
How does that work?
It suggests that maybe even rocks aren't entirely dead or stupid. Maybe they represent a very, very primitive form of consciousness.
Whoa, okay. That's a bigger leap for some people. How can a rock be conscious? A scientist would say hitting a bell and hearing it ring is just physics, vibrations.
Sure, and that's where the definition of consciousness comes in. The argument isn't that a rock thinks like we do,
Right.
but when glass resonates, when a bell responds to being struck, That responsiveness, that capacity to vibrate and react, could be seen as an extremely rudimentary form of awareness. Consciousness 1.0, maybe.
So our consciousness with colors, ideas, self-reflection is just a much more complex, subtle version of that basic responsiveness.
That's the idea. It's a spectrum, so the argument gets flipped on its head.
Instead of the tough guy saying consciousness is just complicated minerals.
The warm-hearted view says minerals are just very simple, rudimentary consciousness.
It's an inversion, really.
It is. And at the end of the day, the sources suggest the choice between these views shapes our entire experience. It's the difference between looking at existence and saying, basically, blah, it's all meaningless. Or looking at it and saying, hooray, wow, what a show. Hashtag tag, outro.
So where does that leave us? We've kind of taken apart that feeling of being an isolated self, trapped in skin, the skin-encapsulated ego. We've looked at those two big Western stories, the judgmental maker god and the universe as just a dumb, meaningless machine.
Both of which can feel pretty oppressive in different ways.
Yeah. And we've explored this alternative, the idea that we actually grew out of the universe. We are the universe, in a way, like apples on a tree.
And if we really connect with that idea, the implications are pretty huge, aren't they?
Yeah.
That feeling of estrangement, of being the little man fighting the world, that naturally leads to anxiety, conflict, the need to conquer.
But if we feel connected, like we grew from here.
Then maybe the relationship shifts from conquest to, well, harmony, flow, participation, less battle array, more belonging.
It changes everything. Okay, so here's a final thought to mull over, building on all this. If the Earth really is an organism that peoples, and if maybe even rocks have some super basic form of consciousness that, given enough time, like billions of years, could eventually come alive and organize itself like the acorn knows how to become an oak, then what kind of timescales are we even talking about? Could our current form of intelligence just be like a brief flash, a temporary flowering within a much vaster, slower geological consciousness?
Wow. That really shifts the perspective on our own importance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are we the peak or just a particularly active moment in something much, much larger?
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Something to definitely chew on.